we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. Engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
Hey, travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of the Texas Transparency Project. I'm your host, Greg Cooper, and here on the Texas Transparency Project, we deep dive local politics, mainly school boards and city councils, but anything in all Johnson County politics are on the table. We air most Thursdays at 5 p.m. JoCo Community Radio has many shows and airs 24 hours a day. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Here at the Texas Transparency Project, we focus on 3 relevant topics applicable to residents of Johnson County and do what we can to shed light on how they affect all of us. The 3 are federal and state politics when they're applicable to us here in Johnson County, Texas local municipal politics, mainly county governments and city councils, and Texas school politics, specifically school districts, school boards, and school bonds. Regarding school districts, resources, and for help navigating issues with local ISDs and the education here in Texas, we rely heavily on Families Engaged for Effective Education. Who is Families Engaged for Effective Education? Why do we rely on them? Well, their mission is to educate parents, citizens, and lawmakers on possible damage of legislation which potentially could undermine the family, our public education system, and our constitutional republic. They have a local chapter here in Johnson County and can be reached through their website at www.familiesengaged.org and on Facebook at Families Engaged for Effective Education. Tonight on the Texas Transparency Project, we will be staying right where we have been recently with the March 5th primary election looming here in Johnson County. We have hosted a slew of guests running in this primary election, and we will be hosting more between tonight's guests and the actual election day on March 5th. This week, we host a candidate for the Texas House of Representatives, accomplished trial attorney, Mr. Lyndon Laird. So before we get to tonight's guest, let's discuss what the Texas House of Representatives is and what those elected to it do. So the Texas House of Representatives is composed of 150 members, each elected for a 2-year term. The Texas legislature meets in regular session for about 5 months every other year. We just completed the 88th legislative session last spring. So regular sessions begin at noon on the second Tuesday in January of odd numbered years and can last no more than 140 days, ending during the last week of May or the first week of June. Special sessions may be called by the governor and can last up to 30 days. So for our episode introduction, tonight we're privileged to introduce esteemed and experienced attorney, Mr. Lyndon Laird. He's a candidate for the 58th House District here in Texas. So Texas's 58th district includes Crescent, Burleson, and parts of South Mansfield on the north side, Venus, Alvarado, and Grandview on the east side, Glen Rose and Godley on the west side, Rio Vista to the south, with Joshua, Keene, and Cleburne smack dab in the middle. Mr. Laird is competing for your vote against two others, Ms. Helen Kerwin and Representative Dwayne Burns. Ms. Kerman was a guest here on Texas Transparency Project a few weeks ago, and Representative Burns was here 2 weeks ago. All three candidates should be commended for agreeing to come on the Texas Transparency Project. We and the voters appreciate it. Stump speeches and Q&As are the norm. Sitting down for an extended live interview, it's another animal, much more difficult, and we're lucky here in Texas's 58th House District to have candidates who are courageous and accommodating enough and in touch with the voters enough to agree to sit down for an extended period of time. The primary election is quickly approaching. We're in the middle of it now in early voting. So please take a note of the following key voting dates. So early voting began on February 20th, and it will continue through March 1st. If you haven't voted and are registered to vote here in Johnson County, get out and vote. This is a constitutional privilege that a lot of people have sacrificed for, and it's the least that we can do to respect those founding fathers and those that came before us to secure that right for us. Early voting allows you to vote at any voting location, but on voting day, you'll have to vote in your precinct. Of note, whoever wins this primary will be representing all of us in the 58th House District for the next 2 years, starting after the November general election, and will serve in the 89th Texas legislative session. So, without further ado, let's get to tonight's guest, the esteemed and experienced attorney, Mr. Lyndon Laird. He's a board-certified, Baylor-trained trial attorney who has represented plaintiffs and defendants in everything from personal injury, complex business litigation, and appeals. Mr. Laird has been recognized as a top 100 plaintiff civil trial lawyer in Texas by the National Trial Lawyers. Furthermore, he has received Martindale-Hubbell's highest peer rating of AV preeminent and has been peer voted numerous times as a top attorney in personal injury as well as other disciplines, ranked number 3 nationally in trial advocacy by U.S. News and World Report. Mr. Lyndon Laird, welcome to the Texas Transparency Project. And in your own words, tell us about yourself and why you feel prepared and qualified to represent us, the citizens of Johnson County, in Texas's 58th House District, sir.
Greg, thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you and to visit with your listeners today. I appreciate it very, very much. Greg, as you mentioned, I'm an attorney, board-certified trial attorney, and I've been licensed for 39 years now. And in the course of my practice, what I have done is solve tough problems for my clients. And I have represented clients in every sort of legal situation that they might face in a typical lifetime. Family law matters, contract matters, real estate matters, securities matters, personal injury, criminal, and on and on. And so I know the things that affect people and impact their lives. I know how to solve those problems for them. And I think that because of my experience in handling these types of problems and in handling complex litigation, I've developed a set of skills and judgment that qualifies me and enables me to solve tougher problems, such as we are facing today here in Texas District 58, and in fact across the entire state. And some of those tough problems, Greg, are the illegal alien influx from south of the border. We've got a broken property tax system that's inequitable and not fair to people. We have inadequate school choice. We have a constant tug of war between state power and federal power in Washington. And we have other issues as well. And these are tough problems. They're not simple problems. They're complex problems with no simple solutions. But I believe that my career has, in essence, been preparation for the next step that I want to take now. And as an attorney, I can help maybe a few dozen clients in a year's time. Okay. As your state rep, I can help perhaps thousands of people as your state rep. And I can help them. I can tackle tough problems, much tougher problems than have tackled in the past. And so that's what I want to do. In the course of my career, I've defended all sorts of clients and represented all sorts of clients. I've represented companies like Ford and Toyota, countless individuals, small businesses, and professionals. I've defended professionals like doctors and lawyers and engineers, securities dealers. And Greg, one of the professionals that I successfully defended when I was a baby lawyer 35 plus years ago is the medical doctor who delivered me at the old Cleveland Memorial Hospital many, many years ago, Dr. Vernon L. Thomas, who was a country doctor and that made house calls going up into the 70s and 80s. And
where'd those days go?
yes. He made house calls, and he was our family doctor for many, many, many years. And I was a baby lawyer in Dallas in 87 or 88. And a local judge here in Johnson County, Judge Tom Ball, who's deceased now, knew my family and called me at my office in Dallas. And he said, Dr. Thomas has been sued for medical malpractice, but he does not have insurance to defend him. He says, can you help him? I said, I'll see what I can do, Judge Ball. And so I took on that case against Dr. Vernon L. Thomas, that medical malpractice lawsuit, defending him. I was only about 3 years out of law school, and filed various motions in court, made various appearances and arguments, and I got that case dismissed for him. And he had tears coming down his face when he learned about the result of that case. And I did not charge him to do that. That was part of my pro bono legal work for the year. I did not charge him, and I'll never forget the gratitude that was evident in his face. But the thing I most remember, Greg, is how it made me feel that I had done something useful to someone else, someone who was important to me. He was a very important person to me. He was a good man, and he was sued unjustly, and I helped him and didn't charge him to do that. I'll never forget the way it made me feel. And so I try to duplicate that feeling in representing clients even today. I try to get the job done for my clients, to do them a good job and to improve their quality of life. And so that's sort of what impels me to run to be state representative. I want to continue solving problems for my clients, except if I'm your state rep, the entire district here will be my clients. Okay.
Well, and you talk about the satisfaction you get from helping people. I mean,
Yes.
a state rep is not a well-compensated position. This is a lot of hard work.
True.
I spent a lot of time in the 80th legislative session down in Austin. I mean, they work till 2, 3 in the morning. It's a selfless, thankless job. So you will get a lot of satisfaction if elected, and some of the hope and change that you can bring potentially to people. So that's really great story to hear.
Well,
sir.
I don't necessarily agree that it's a thankless job. I believe it will be full of reward. I think that the particular skill set that I've developed over 4 decades, my ability to research, to write, to argue in court, to see what is important and what is not important. That's a crucial skill, to see what is important and what is not. My ability to negotiate with the opposition. And of course, we're going to have pretty serious opposition down in Austin, the Democrats primarily. But I can negotiate with the opposition. So I think all the skills that I have sharpened and developed over many, many years basically have prepared me for this next step, which is to be your state rep and to tackle even tougher problems to help a lot more people.
And before we move on to the issues here, to talk a little bit more and highlight your career as a lawyer, you're board certified,
Yes.
which is an upper echelon. So explain
Yes.
to the listeners what a board certified attorney is and how that's a much higher level of competency that you have to go through to gain that, from what I
Sure.
understand.
Yes, that's true, Greg. Uh, Board certification is a highly distinguished, notification of in the legal profession. We have about 115,000 attorneys in this state right now, and I think we may have a couple of thousand who are board certified, and I happen to be one of them. Board certification is a multi-pronged process that you can choose to go through. Most attorneys are not board certified. Many attorneys decide not to try it because it's a quite rigorous process to do. First of all, you have to have had so many years of experience in your specialty. My specialty happens to be personal injury trial law. That's what I'm board certified in. And so you've got to have, I think it's 5 years of continuous practice in that specialty. Then you have to go through a very rigorous peer review process. I think I had to get 15 or so attorneys and judges to vouch for me and to report on my background and my character and my experience. And they submit their reviews to the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in Austin. And then so they do your background check and your peer review. And then the Texas board has to decide whether or not you're qualified to sit for the exam. And so they did allow me to take the exam. Then you have a 6-hour exam you have to take to pass for that specialty. And it is a bear of an exam.
Multiple choice?
Oh, it's a bear, Greg. It was even worse than the bar exam that I had taken, ages ago. It was much worse than even the bar exam. I did pass it, thanks to the grace of God. And so I am board certified. I'm very, very proud of that. My dad, he's deceased now, but he told me for many years he wanted me to become board certified. And so I regret that he did not live to see that. But I did fulfill it, better late than never. And so it's a high standard, and not many are entitled to it.
Well, like God's grace, your father's sitting up in the pearly gates looking down.
I believe so.
Proud of you.
I
So
believe so.
I'm sure he knows about that. So before we get into the issues here, that's plaguing the Texas 58th district, where can the listeners go to learn about your campaign, more about your platform, and to contact you if they have any questions or help out with your campaign as we wind down this election process?
They can go to lyndonlaird.com. Is the primary source. Also, my Facebook page. I'm discussing the issues on Lyndon Laird on my Facebook page. Those would be the two primary sources.
Okay, so pretty much the campaign issues. It's pretty simple for Texas 58. We're talking property taxes, border security, school choice. Those are about probably the three biggest ones.
Yep.
As you've been out on the campaign trail and you've been very active. What would you say out of those three is the top one? And we'll start there with what we talk about.
Greg, there's almost no question. It's almost unanimous that the border security crisis is the number one issue in the state. And I would say probably 95% of the people I've spoken to, that is their opinion. That is my opinion as well. And it's a crisis in more ways than one, in my judgment. It is a crisis not only because we have hundreds of thousands of illegals pouring across our border. In December alone, we had 300,000 that came into the state. And that, in a real sense, is an invasion. It's an invasion. But with that invasion, the illegals in many cases are bringing drugs. In many cases, they're bringing criminal cartels. They are consuming our resources in housing, in education, in food and other resources, and they're violating our laws. But it's a double crisis, Greg, because not only are they coming in and straining our resources and breaking our laws, but we have literally a constitutional crisis right now between state government and the federal government. We have Governor Abbott in Paxton who are trying to lay out the razor wire and the buoys to keep the illegals out. On the one hand, on the other hand, we had the federal government under Biden coming in and cutting the wire, and it's an untenable situation. And so, this may resolve it to some extent with the November elections, but until then we have to make do. But this is it's a serious crisis between state sovereignty and federal power.
So you're talking about Eagle Pass,
Yeah.
down a couple hundred miles away from San Antonio, down on the
Yes.
border. Piedra Negras is the border town in Mexico, and it's basically a large park and country club that had the federal government, from what I understand, had been using as like a staging area.
Yes.
And Governor Abbott finally had enough. Day late and dollar short. I wish this happened years ago, but better late than never. But and so there's been a lot of talk about the legal aspects of this, and I the way I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer by any means, but classifying this as an invasion and using that verbiage is very important.
Yes.
And it triggers some options, so to speak. So the federal government going in and cutting the barriers that the state of Texas to stop an invasion is establishing. How do you feel like long term that can play out legally? What is any idea on how that will play out? That's a tough question.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a small swath of area. I hope to see it expand to the entire border.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that? How do you see this playing out potentially?
Greg, what I think is going to happen is that the entire country is alarmed at this invasion. Not just Texas, but other states have taken notice of this invasion that we are suffering right now. And as you know, the U.S. Constitution, I think it's Article 10, declares that the states have the right to defend themselves by force if necessary from an invasion. That's in the U.S. Constitution. We have the right to defend our borders. And, whether or not what the governor is going to do to exercise that, as long as Biden is in office, we shall see. But the entire country is up in arms over this invasion. We have an election coming up in November. I think that a Republican president will be installed in office, and the situation may hopefully will change for the better.
So speaking of a Republican president, if you're elected with this primary, there's no Democrat challenger. You'll take office at next year, but be finalized in November. The Republican gets in office in the presidency, and it's Trump. It looks like it's going to be Trump the way it's trending now. He had a lot of policies that were overturned. Now, I would love to see those legislatively enacted through Congress, but he executive ordered a lot of those, like the Remain in Mexico policy, some of these policies. So you would support reenacting those, maybe expanding those to help with the border?
Yes, I would, Craig. Absolutely. I suspect with President Trump that the wall would be finished down at the border, and we would probably have more vigorous enforcement, and returning these illegals back to Mexico or South America. He has made it very clear that he is very much in favor of U.S. and state sovereignty vis-a-vis the illegal aliens. And so I think the wall would be completed. I think we would have more vigorous enforcement, and our sovereignty would mean something once Trump is in office.
Now, at the state level, and what a state legislator can do, Governor Abbott has enacted Project Lone Star. This is the biggest thing with Project Lone Star is probably the busing of illegals to sanctuary cities.
Yes.
How would you, as a legislature, support that type of stuff in the effect that we can't get to the border wall right away? How would you navigate what you can do as a state rep, as far as some of what Abbott's doing and trying to move some of this? You can't. He doesn't have the authority to deport,
right,
from what I understand. So, but he has the authority to do some things. How would you support that? Would you support expanding it, altering it, changing it, anything like that?
Well, Greg, the first thing I would do is investigate the legal aspects of that. I'm not quite convinced that the busing is a legal solution. And
okay.
So I would invest.
And we want to stay within the law.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one with that opinion. I of course support everything that the governor does and that the attorney general does to try to protect our borders, but I'm not convinced that busing is legal or even constitutional. So I would look at the law as it relates to the busing, and then decide after that.
But definitely say anything that would be taboo off limits to trying to mitigate this process within the confines of the law, obviously, and your role if elected
Well,
as a
there would.
legislator,
I
as a
don't think.
representative.
I can't imagine that there would be a lot because I think that this is an invasion. An invasion is a very serious violation of state sovereignty as well as our national sovereignty. And so it's almost an act of war in that sense. And of course, in during war, we have the right to basically preserve ourselves, come what may. And so perhaps that is the governor's reasoning. I'm not sure, but I would just need to look at the legal ramifications of what he's doing.
And you brought up some of the other issues too, and I think one of the biggest one the trafficking issue, and then the fentanyl. Fentanyl's the hot topic now because it's I mean, drugs are bad enough, and there's a huge problem across the board with them, but fentanyl is really wreaking havoc with how it's masked and it's taken inappropriately and it's killing people. I think a former YouTube CEO's son just died, and it looks like it's gonna and they said that he took something, and it'll be interesting to see what it comes out as.
Well,
but this is a big problem here in Johnson County.
It is a big problem, and Johnson County has had a serious meth problem for many years, 2 or 3 decades, as far back as I can remember. So we've already had a drug problem, and as you mentioned, with the fentanyl coming in, fentanyl is probably 100 times more deadly than meth is, and it's here in Johnson County. The cartels are here in Johnson County, and they're distributing these drugs, meth and fentanyl and other drugs. And so it is a serious problem. Johnson County is notorious around the entire state for having this problem. And I know that the DA and the sheriff's office do the best that they can, but there ought to be something else that we can do about it to mitigate that.
Yeah, and it seems, I'm 50, and it seems over the course of my life, we've watched really hardcore, serious penalties for all drug offenses. And then there's a laxing of, and it seems like it's this big pendulum that swings back and forth. But this fentanyl is a different beast. I have a medical lens from the military, and I gave a lot of opiates for pre-hospital trauma at point of injury in the military. And I mean, I had to reverse some of these agents. People had never had them, and seeing what it does to respiratory depression and some blood pressure issues and things like that, and some anaphylaxis. It's really scary. So there's something that needs to be done with this fentanyl. It's a big deal, and it's starting to creep into the schools, and it's scary.
Well, and on this same topic, Greg, the governor called out one of my opponents. I won't name him by name, but the governor called out one of my opponents for voting with Democrats to minimize or to lessen drug possession, criminal cases. And that's the last thing we should be doing is voting to minimize or liberalize drug possession charges. I think the drug involved was marijuana. Marijuana is a well-known gateway drug. It can lead to harder drugs like fentanyl and meth and so on. I mean, why vote to minimize the possession penalties for marijuana or for any drug? But the governor called out specifically one of my opponents for voting with Democrats to do that. That's not something I would do. Why do it?
And I agree. And I mean, marijuana and cannabis is not the same creature it was 20, 30 years ago. There is getting to concentrates and percentage levels that are a lot different than a little bit of someone smoking a little joint on a corner. I mean, let's be realistic. But you're right. It is a gateway drug, and it's been shown that being too lax in a lot of reasons doesn't really solve a lot of problems. The state legislature just passed some legislation to help school districts to increase some penalties for some of this stuff through vapes.
Yes.
There's a local school here that had a vaping problem so bad in the bathrooms at school, they had to remove the bathroom doors. Like, that's how do you get to a point where you have a vaping problem, and then it gets to the point that your solution is that, like, figure out where this is coming from and punish it heavily to where there's some penalties for it. So, hey, we're here at Texas Transparency Project with candidate, the esteemed lawyer, Lyndon Laird. We're going to come back and talk property taxes and school choice. Don't forget to vote. We'll be back in a few.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Johnson County, welcome back to the Texas Transparency Project. We are here with candidate Lyndon Laird, running for Texas House District 58. And before we get back to the issues here, I want to remind everybody that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoCo.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch. And the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store. Check out our lineup and more at jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEXAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more at the tiffy.com. And the way we've had this awesome February weather with this little spring surge, maybe she'll have some nice summer and late spring summer wears for us. That's at the tiffy.com. So, Mr. Laird, we're back. We wrapped up the border security here. We're going to finish the second segment up here with some property tax issues, some school bond issues, and probably talk a little bit about some Bitcoin and some the BioSolid thing that just broke. We'll touch on that.
All right.
But property taxes. I pay attention a little bit to state politics, and Johnson County really is kind of ahead of the curve in public awareness on property taxes. The Central Appraisal District is elected by the taxing entities. They appoint a Central Appraisal board of director, or Central Appraisal appraiser, and it's kind of a circumventive way of how the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors is elected. Now, some of that's changing, and I think some locals here, Craig Hunley has a horse barn group that is just really good, and he's navigated and really brought a lot of people together that have a lot of different political views, because everybody's suffering from this proproperty tax issue. I think it's fair to say.
No doubt about it.
It's 2/3 to 3/4 goes to school districts. But every year it seems like appraisals skyrocket, and we pay a lot more money, and people are really hurting. what are your thoughts on property taxes, the system we have here in Texas, the oppressiveness of how it impacts property owners, and what are your thoughts on that, and where are you leaning as far as what, if elected, you can bring to the table?
Yeah, Greg, property taxes are consistently the number two issue with the people that I've spoken to in this district. Right after the illegal immigration invasion, property taxes is on everyone's mind. And I'll just mention that my mother, who passed away last year at age 83, she owned property most of her life. And I remember the last 20 years or so of her life, she would periodically complain to me that she never really felt as though she owned anything. She felt as though she were paying perpetual rent to the state and to the county in the form of property taxes. And a lot of people feel that way. You know, they don't feel as though they can ever own their property, even though it's bought and paid for. The mortgage may be paid off. They still owe these property taxes every year, year after year after year. And there's nothing they can do about it. And so she would often complain to me about that. And there was an incident I helped her with several years ago, which kind of shocked me on this property tax issue. There's a law relating to what's called the rollback taxes, and this was a shocker. She and I, my brother, owned some property, some farmland that we sold to people who wanted to build homes on them. And to our shock, we almost immediately got a rollback tax notice from the CAD here, going back 3 years. They wanted to assess the value of that property that we sold going back 3 years, give it the commercial value.
Keep your
Yeah, and so it cost us, a huge amount of money to have to pay those rollback taxes, and we even had a hearing on it. Went to the CAD board here, and we argued about it, but there was nothing I could do. It was the law, and I really couldn't believe that was the law, and I was shocked to learn that they used to go back 5 years, not just 3 years. And so the rollback taxes are not fair in many ways. We have many retirees, people who are elderly, who simply can't pay these ever increasing property taxes, and they're having to sell their homes, and they're losing their homes. And so I'm in favor, Greg, of either completely revamping our property tax system, for example, to get rid of the rollback tax and other things, and to get rid of the every year reappraisal process, turn that into a once every 3 year process, or to totally eliminate the entire system. Given this state's tremendous gross domestic product, I think we have a $1.9 trillion GDP. If we were a sovereign nation, we would be like the 8th largest economy in the world. And so we have an enormous GDP. And if we were to institute selective value added taxes and consumption taxes, that would more than compensate for the property taxes. We could do away with the property tax system and substitute value added taxes and consumption taxes and have money to spare. And that would do away with the inequities in the current system.
And just to revisit the rollback thing you're talking about. So the way I understand this, and just to help the readers or the listeners kind of understand this, you had a piece of property that was ag exempted. You were agriculturally doing this, and then when you went to sell it, you got penalized for transferring it over, correct? Yes. And it also works the other way, the way I understand it, that if you buy a piece of property and you want to do ag on it, you don't get to take a advantage of the ag exemption for a certain amount of years too. So it's really stacked.
That's true.
It's really stacked against you. And then you brought up senior citizens. Watching a lot of the mud bonds and the school bonds pass, and anytime they're talking about raising taxes, you always hear them say, "Oh, if you're 65 or over, it's not going to affect your taxes."
Yeah.
There's a couple little bit of misleadingness there. Like a lot of retired people at some point are going to pass this property on to their siblings. This is generational wealth.
Sure.
This is and they're going to get hit hard with this. So there's a lot of, it's not as simple as if you're old, it doesn't necessarily affect you. And it's good that you're seeing that. And I want to compliment you on another thing here. It's really easy when you're not an incumbent. An incumbent has a record to run on. If you have a bunch of PACs supporting you, you're kind of emboldened to where a lot of your big donors are coming from. But you make it very clear. You were for eliminating property tax.
Yes.
You have some solutions for it, but you're also very upfront with voters. And I'm going to quote right off your website. I refuse to try to mislead voters, says Laird, by telling you that on my first day in Austin, I will go down and magically and single-handedly fix a flawed tax system that evolved over decades. What I will promise is from day one, my number one priority will be to work on this. And that's a very mature statement. It's really easy to come in and make all these promises when you're not in that seat yet, but to recognize that, hey, it's not as simple as snapping your fingers. So I appreciate, as a voter, trying to educate myself, seeing that type of engagement and acknowledgement that it's not that simple.
Well, it's just realistic thinking, Greg. These are tough issues that we're talking about: property taxes, illegal immigration, and they're going to require tough solutions. They're not simple issues, and I've been around long enough to know that a complicated problem is not going to have typically a simple solution. But on the property tax issue, one of my priorities would be, the first week in office would be to write legislation exempting all persons 65 and above from all property taxes. That might be sort of a first step we could accomplish fairly easily. I think I can get the support to do that, but that might be a first step towards eliminating the entire property tax system. And I think we'll have a lot of support to do that.
Well, and I'm a disabled veteran and I get tax breaks, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm very, very appreciative of it. At the same time, I fight property taxes. I'm not saying, just give me all your tax money. So that would be a great first step. And another thing that is going to, hopefully it forces some of these taxing entities to get control of their budgets.
Yes.
Because I mean, the reality is that it doesn't matter what my property tax appraises for if the city and the school districts all budget zero. I don't pay anything. So there's a lot of manipulation in the system that allows a taxing entity to try to say, like, wow, that's the appraisals, and this is part of the process that Craig Hunley's been so effective on in getting the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors, kind of the people's candidates in there who are promising to kind of clean this up. So I would love to see what they're doing to retired folks is really sad.
Well, Craig,
and it happened with annexation, and now it's kind of back again with the higher property appraisal. They
Yes.
used to be forced annexed out of their properties.
Craig, of course, is a friend of mine, and I rely upon his advice and counsel on this property tax issue. And he's a wealth of information and wisdom on this issue, and I'll be relying upon him as an advisor when I get down to Austin on this issue.
Oh, he's been working on this for a long time, and like I said, he's masterfully done it. I went to a lot of meetings with him and spoke at a lot of councils and school boards, and I've learned so much from that man. And like I said, he manages it well. He doesn't let petty politics get involved with the
his younger brother was a classmate of mine at Grandview High many years ago. I think his name is Doug. So that's my connection with his family.
Right on. So, and then are you for the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors being directly elected from the people and not the taxing entities? Because there's a lot of shade there.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And here again, how does that go bad when some of the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors were voted out? They actually gave the chief appraiser a big raise and extended his contract beyond the term of the individuals that was just elected.
Yeah.
And you want to start talking crony politics.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on. So I'm glad to see those individuals get elected, and then we'll move on from property tax. And I'll tell you a story that's similar to yours. One of the individuals, we had him on the show. He was running for for Central Appraisal District Board of Directors, trying to get the taxing entities to vote for him. And I asked him, I go, how did you get involved in this fight? And he says, well, I got a call from my wife one day, and she says, you want the good news or bad news? And he said, give me the good news. And she goes, well, our house is paid off. He goes, well, give me the bad news. It's going to cost us $1,200 a month to keep it.
No.
And I mean,
that's true.
So,
yeah.
And so he said it was a big awakening. So good to see you focus on those. And it would be a long slog, I think.
Well, Greg, I want to try to work on issues that affect people's lives, that affect their quality of life and their family's quality of life. And these issues we're talking about, I think, do that. The immigration crisis, the property tax broken system, and school choice and other matters. They affect our quality of life, and how good life is for us and our families. And those are the kinds of things I want to work on.
So real quick before we get to school choice, this in Johnson County here at the Commissioner's Court, a biosolid health crisis broke.
Yeah.
The way I understand it, it's not necessarily the human waste that's a problem. It's all the chemicals. So basically Fort Worth, hospitals, businesses, chemicals, all this stuff's going down the drain. It's getting processed in a wastewater treatment plant, converted to fertilizer, spread over Johnson County. I've spoken with the investigator. The victims just had a horse die, had some other issues that are pretty significant. There's some precedents set in the Ohio River Valley with DuPont and Teflon.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this, and how concerned should we be about PFAS, and potential changes moving forward with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
You were at Commissioner's Court.
Yeah, I was, Greg. Thank you for the question. I am closely monitoring this developing situation. I was at the Commissioner's Court hearing last Friday in downtown Cleveland, and there was a second hearing that evening in Grandview, which I also attended. And basically the same information was discussed at the Grandview hearing. As you know, I'm a trial lawyer, and in the course of my career, a big part of what I have done is to examine and cross-examine expert witnesses, everything from toxicologists to engineers to medical doctors, every kind of expert you can imagine. I have either presented them on direct examination as part of my case, or cross-examined them to defend my case. And my impression in the commissioners or in the deputy's report, which I have right here, is this is not a scientific document, and this would not hold up in court by any means. It would not.
From what I understand, the investigation is still ongoing.
It is.
But they felt they needed to raise the public awareness and give them an opportunity to figure it out themselves. But
that's true. That's true. But it's interesting. In a court of law, you have to show causation, that someone's actions caused an injury to someone else. That's called proximate cause. This report does not even have the word causation in it. Okay.
Well, from what I understand, they don't think they don't have proof that any laws were broken yet. It's just that there's bad stuff in the ground.
True.
I don't
That's
know.
true.
But
I
don't know if that's.
Well, they've already instituted litigation. There's a law firm from Maryland. I have it right here. A law firm was hired to represent these families affected. And they filed this lawsuit in state court in Baltimore.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay,
and this was filed on the same day as the commissioner's court hearing.
Okay,
which I don't think is coincidental. These attorneys approached me and gave me their business card, and so I think they're basically trying to drum up business. And as part of doing that, I think they're trying to catastrophize this entire situation here. Greg, this biological stuff has been widely applied around the country with no undue effects. As far as I can tell, the constable who investigated this farm out east of Grandview did not measure the materials that were on the farm where it was actually applied. They simply measured it on the complainant's property. So we have those measurements, but not on the actual property where it was applied.
I think they had degrading amounts from the easement out, for the way I understand it. So they weren't allowed to. They weren't given permission to do
this.
So.
We don't know what, if any, fertilizer or other chemicals have been applied to the subject property going back 50 years. What else has been applied? That question was not asked. That's one of the first things I would ask if I were in court. What else has been applied here?
Sure.
How do you know that these other chemicals haven't affected your livestock? Where is the proof of causation that this fertilizer has affected your livestock? This doesn't even mention cause. What this talks about, Greg, is what's known as correlation. Okay. In the law, there's something called correlation. Basically, you have two events that occur around the same time. Okay, it happens every day. Let me give you an example. The sun rose in the eastern sky this morning. Agreed?
Yes.
As it does every morning. Okay. And let's just say hypothetically that there's 1,000 car crashes in this state, in the state of Texas today. I'm just guessing. Okay. I don't know how many, but let's assume that those facts are true. Okay. Well, using the logic here, the correlation of the fertilizer and the injury to livestock, we could just as easily say that, well, the sun rose in the east this morning, and so that caused the 1,000 car crashes because they occurred around the same time. That's fallacious thinking. And that's the type of thinking that this report shows. There's no proof of causation. There are 4 members on this committee that are mentioned here in this report. And this was striking to me, Greg. If I can find, here they are right here. This is the PEER team members, and it lists 5 members of this outfit. And if you look at their bios, you'll see that 4 of these 5, they're not engineers, they're not toxicologists, they're not scientists. What are they? They're lawyers. They're lawyers. This is an advocacy group, okay, who sponsored this investigation. They're lawyers they're advocating, for their cause. Now, one of them, I think, is some sort of a bioscientist, but these other 4 are attorneys.
They had a video of the scientist, a doctor.
Yeah.
At the hearing.
Well, that brings up my next point. From my experience, I can guarantee you that if you bring me an expert on any subject, environmental hazards, fertilizer, any subject, who says Proposition A, this is my position, this is my belief, this is my opinion, I can find you another expert who will say the exact opposite.
Fair enough.
It happens every day in court across this country. I can find you many experts who will say the exact opposite because they're paid to do so. It's all about the bucks. My point is, I think this is an overblown situation. I think it's going to blow over with no ill effects. This stuff has been applied widespread around the country for a number of years. And I think this is perhaps a unique situation that this family is suffering on the other side of Grandview. We don't know what else they've applied out there over the years. Their particular property is in a deep sort of ravine or basin, and who knows what effect, if any, that has had on the on their livestock. So. This is still in the early stages, but right now, at least in my mind, we do not have enough information to sound any kind of serious alarm on this fertilizer being applied in Johnson County or anywhere else.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope it's not as serious as it's made out to be, because nobody wants a lot of the effects that are being contributed with this. So on to school choice, sir. School choice. For years and years and years, the Republican Party in Texas didn't want to touch this. They finally jumped on board at the 88th legislative session. It became a big deal. A lot of education changes. STAR went online. They're pushing an online digital curriculum to help with STAR. I'm not a fan of STAR. That's a whole nother issue. But school choice became it became big enough to where they called many special sessions trying to push this.
Yeah.
It's gotten President Trump. It's gotten the governor involved in House District 58th race. Where are you on school choice, education savings accounts, and vouchers? Those 3 issues are a little bit different, all of them. Where are you at with that, sir?
Yeah, Greg. School choice seems to be in consistent third place in priority among the people I talk to. Almost everybody is in favor of what we call school choice. Now, as you mentioned, there's a difference between school choice and the voucher system. I believe that the goals that they seek to accomplish are somewhat similar. I know the governor. The governor has the best of intentions in his House Bill number 1, which is essentially a voucher bill. I haven't read the entire thing. It's like 150 or 200 pages long. I'm familiar with the highlights of it. There are certain things about it that I disagree with. There are certain things that I agree with. I understand that the governor's bill, House Bill 1, would give money to illegal immigrants, which I am definitely opposed to. and would subsidize their education in some sense. It may very well raise our property taxes because, as you know, I think 75% or so of our property taxes go towards the maintenance and operation of our schools. And so I'm not totally familiar with the governor's bill. I am in favor of school choice, and with the definition being that with school choice, parents and caregivers would have the right to use education tax dollars to educate their kids in the way they see fit. Now, that might mean private tutors. It might mean homeschooling. It might mean a private school someplace. But I think they should be able to use their education tax dollars to educate their kids in the way they see fit with a minimum of government intervention. And the governor's bill maintains that sort of government control over the educational process. And that's another objection I would have to it.
Yeah, I wasn't for this bill. I think it's a bad bill. I am 100% for school choice. I think we have school choice now. It's just not funding for our school choice.
Yes, yes.
So, and what I worry about in something like this is that it will actually minimize choice if you don't want to take, supposedly take the money. You're right on the illegal immigration issue. It's not omitted in the bill, and it's Texas Constitution says we have to educate everybody. So you're 100% right on that. It was going to burn through a lot of the surplus money.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's overtaxation. So you can't, the goal is to not be overtaxed, period. And the goal is to reduce taxes. So that surplus is not indefinite. So the question is, where does that money come from? It's going to come from somewhere. It's going to come from some type of a tax if it's going to not be sunsetted and not have longevity. So what would a yes vote from Lyndon Laird, representative for Texas House 58 need? Like, what are the non-negotiables that it would have to meet?
You mean for school choice?
For school choice, for you to get on board with something, like what are some of the this is the no joke. This is like, obviously, if it's going to support illegal immigrants, it sounds like you'd be a no on that.
Yes,
so,
I would be a no on that. And perhaps the governor's bill could be sort of modified to take out that provision that might require an act of the legislature to do that. I would be in favor of doing that. But I want either no or minimal government interference in the parents' decisions as far as their kids'
so
education.
star test, you wouldn't mandate that. You would say that. That's
correct.
Okay. Good.
Correct.
That's a good.
I would not want any standardized assessment testing done, and leave it to the parents to best educate their kids.
Any parochial or religious things that you'd want pushed out if they took money? Are you okay with money being used to go to like my kids? I pay to have my kids go to a Christian school at a Baptist church.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
My kids went to private Christian schools years ago, and so I think that's a legitimate use of those tax dollars.
Any part of it also was going to mandate curriculum. Are you cool with leaving curriculum open to the people making those choices? Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think the government has no role in deciding the curriculum.
Awesome. So we're winding it down here. People should go to your website. You were the only one talking about some Bitcoin noise pollution issues. And I heard Jake Warnett, previous show to this one, talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
I need to learn about this because this is new to me, but it sounds pretty interesting.
Here's a 30-second.
Got about 10.
There's a huge Bitcoin plant in operation right now just outside of Granbury. It is damaging people's health, their hearing, damaging their livestock. They've got 90,000 supercomputers going around the clock.
Grandview to Godly, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Why have thousands of aspiring